The investigation into the shocking incident involving the black single-dad janitor and the high-profile billionaire intensified in ways no one could have predicted, drawing in corporate watchdogs, labor unions, security analysts, political commentators, and millions of online observers who found themselves deeply invested in a story that had begun as a medical emergency but was now spiraling into an economic and ethical storm. What had started as a near-fatal collapse inside a corporate tower was turning into a confrontation between public perception and corporate power, leaving executives scrambling to contain the fallout. The billionaire at the center of it all remained out of view as her medical team confirmed that she had suffered a rare but dangerous neurological reaction that could have proven fatal without immediate intervention. The janitor's unconventional and desperate action, administering a rescue breath that effectively stabilized her airway, was medically justified according to emergency response experts. Yet internally, several board members questioned whether the optics could be damaging for the company's image. Their concerns were quickly drowned out by an avalanche of public support for the janitor, whose name circulated across broadcast networks, earning him praise for courage, composure, and instinctive heroism. As reporters dug into his background, the narrative became even more compelling. The man who had become the center of a national conversation was revealed to be a widowed father of a young girl, juggling multiple jobs to pay off hospital debts left behind after his wife's illness. His co-workers described him as hardworking and unfailingly kind, a man who never complained and often worked late shifts so others with families could go home early. But as public admiration grew, so did the scrutiny. A small but vocal group of online commentators attempted to spin the story into something it was not, with conspiracy theories claiming the billionaire had staged the event to manipulate stock prices, while others suggested the janitor's involvement was inappropriate or unprofessional. Security footage later debunked these claims, showing clearly that he was the only person present when the billionaire collapsed and that he acted purely to save her life. Despite this, the initial shockwaves inside the billionaire's corporation did not settle easily. Human resources departments from major companies weighed in publicly, questioning why no trained medical personnel were on-site in a building of such wealth and status. Workplace safety organizations issued statements calling for mandatory CPR training across corporate America, pointing out that the janitor's quick action filled a gap that should never have existed. Meanwhile, shareholders demanded answers about how such an incident had been allowed to unfold and why essential emergency readiness protocols had failed so dramatically in a company valued at billions. While analysts speculated about the potential financial repercussions, something unexpected began happening. Sympathy and admiration for the janitor shifted into an uncomfortable spotlight on corporate inequality. Journalists highlighted the disparity between a billionaire whose wealth towered over the skyline and a janitor who could barely afford rent. Commentators asked why a man working in a skyscraper worth hundreds of millions was earning wages so low that he qualified for government assistance. The billionaire herself, still recovering from her medical emergency, was reportedly overwhelmed when she learned of the controversies erupting outside her hospital room. Sources close to her claimed she expressed frustration that the man who saved her life was being dragged into corporate and political conflicts he never asked for. Even more concerning were the attempts by certain executives to suppress internal information about the incident, reportedly fearing liability exposure. These alleged efforts only worsened public outrage, leading to calls for an independent review of the company's internal practices. Across social media, the janitor's quiet humility and his devotion to his daughter became symbols of human decency in contrast to the coldness often associated with corporate culture. People shared screenshots of his old fundraising page where he had tried to raise money for his daughter's school supplies, and within hours, donations from strangers poured in, exceeding the goal by tens of thousands. Despite the explosion of public attention, he remained out of the spotlight, reportedly refusing interviews because he wanted the focus to stay on the woman whose life he had saved rather than on himself. When a reporter finally caught up with him outside his apartment, he expressed discomfort at being called a hero, insisting he simply did what anyone would have done in the same situation. Medical experts strongly disagreed, pointing out that most people freeze under stress, and without his immediate response, the outcome could have been dramatically different. In the days that followed, pressure mounted on the corporation to publicly acknowledge him. Employees organized petitions demanding his recognition, and several major news networks debated whether the company's silence was strategic, negligent, or simply a sign of internal chaos. As the story continued to gain national traction, Even political figures began weighing in, calling for better protections and pay for essential workers. The janitor became the face of a growing conversation about labor dignity, economic justice, and who society considers worthy of praise. Meanwhile, internal leaks from the billionaire's company revealed that some board members were deeply worried about her eventual return. They believed the emotional and symbolic nature of the incident would give her a dramatically different perspective on internal operations and employee welfare, potentially disrupting their carefully balanced profit strategies. Sources close to her insisted that she had already asked for detailed reports on employee conditions and wage structures, indicating she intended to act as soon as she recovered. What no one knew yet was that her first priority upon returning would not be corporate restructuring, crisis control, or PR cleanup. Her first priority would be the man who saved her life. And that decision, when announced, would change everything. In the days that followed the dramatic rescue, the story of the billionaire and the single dad janitor began shifting from a breaking news shock to a developing national conversation. What had initially been reported as a near-fatal medical emergency transformed into something far more complicated, layered with social questions about class, dignity, and the unseen workers who often remain invisible until the moment their courage forces the world to notice them. Commentators across networks debated the implications of what had happened in that quiet executive hallway, where a janitor performed life-saving action before trained emergency responders even arrived. Some focused on the startling intimacy of the moment, others on the contrast between the billionaire's polished world and the janitor's daily life. But nearly all agreed on one thing. The event had forced people to reconsider assumptions they didn't even realize they were making. Inside the company's headquarters, the atmosphere felt different as well. Employees walked the hallways with a newfound sense of alertness, understanding how close they had come to losing the woman who built the company from the ground up. She remained a visionary figure to most, respected even by those who did not know her personally. Her return to work, though doctors advised rest, sent an instant ripple of relief across the building. She moved more slowly than she once had, and her voice carried a slightly softer edge, but she was clearly determined to resume leadership in her own way. No one expected her, however, to make her first request something so surprising. She asked to see the janitor. The message caused whispered speculation in every department. Some expected a formal ceremony or a public thank you. Others predicted a private meeting. When he finally stepped into her office, he entered with the same cautious respect he carried everywhere, but the tension in his shoulders revealed his uncertainty. He was a man who preferred to stay out of the spotlight, a man used to working quietly in empty rooms long after executives had gone home. The idea of standing in front of the most powerful person in the company made him feel strangely out of place, though he tried not to show it. What he didn't expect was her gratitude delivered with a sincerity that nearly left him speechless. She spoke not as a billionaire or a CEO, but as someone who understood she owed her life to a man the world often overlooked. She explained what the doctors had said, how the blockage had been severe, how every passing second had increased the possibility that she might never recover. She told him, in a voice steadier than he anticipated, that his intervention had been the decisive factor in keeping her alive. The newspapers mentioned it, but hearing it directly from her carried a weight he wasn't prepared for. Her daughter, she added quietly, had cried when she learned what had happened. That single detail affected him more than any headline. He knew what it meant to have a child rely on you completely, to be the one person they believed would always return at the end of the day. He imagined the fear that would grip a child if that certainty were threatened, and suddenly the situation no longer felt like the story everyone was discussing. It felt painfully human. Then came the shift, the moment where gratitude evolved into something more complicated. She admitted that for the first time in years, the incident forced her to slow down long enough to reflect on the cost of her success. She had built an empire, but she had also built walls around herself. Walls that separated her from the people who worked beneath her. Walls that convinced her she had to carry every burden alone. Yet the person who saved her life was someone operating outside those walls entirely. She didn't say it with embarrassment. She said it with the humility of someone who realized the truth at last. Her words unsettled him because they felt too generous. He insisted that anyone in his position would have done the same, that being trained in CPR and crisis response was simply part of his background and upbringing. But she shook her head gently, a gesture that conveyed a depth of awareness he hadn't expected from someone of her stature. She had seen enough people freeze in moments of crisis to understand that instinct, not training, had carried him through the moment. She told him that courage was not distributed by job title or social status, and that he had displayed a bravery many would never show in their entire lifetime. This exchange alone would have been enough to transform the dynamic between them, but what followed proved even more unexpected. She offered him something he never imagined she would consider, an opportunity, not a reward. She asked what he wanted for his future, what he dreamed of for his daughter, what aspirations he carried but never voiced because life demanded survival instead of ambition. The question stunned him. He had lived so long focused on immediate needs, rent, school supplies, medical bills, groceries, that he rarely allowed himself to think beyond the present. Dreams felt like a luxury he couldn't afford. Yet she insisted, her tone gentle but unyielding. She explained that nearly losing her life had forced her to confront the limits of time, the fragility of opportunity, and the importance of using her influence not only for business but for people. She said she didn't want to simply thank him. She wanted to invest in the man who had risked everything for her without hesitation that he resisted at first, uncomfortable with being the subject of such generosity. But she responded with a kind of emotional clarity that revealed how much the incident had changed her. She told him that saving her life had given her a second chance, and she wanted to honor that by offering one in return. Her voice wavered only slightly when she admitted that she didn't want this to be an employer-employee conversation. She wanted it to be a conversation between human beings, each recognizing the value of the other. Word of their meeting spread quickly throughout the company, igniting new conversations about integrity, humanity, and the unseen connections that could exist beneath the surface of everyday interactions. Some employees wondered if the CEO was acting out of gratitude or something deeper. Others saw it as proof that even the most powerful individuals were capable of profound transformation when confronted with their own vulnerability. But for the janitor, the meaning was simpler and far less dramatic. He wasn't thinking about public perception or corporate gossip. He was thinking about his daughter, about the future she could have, and about the unexpected direction his life seemed to be taking. He left her office not with a sense of victory, but with a sense of purpose, a quiet awareness that the world had shifted in ways he had not anticipated. Behind him, as the door closed, the billionaire sat in her chair longer than usual, processing the same realization. She knew the coming weeks would shape not only her company, but her personal life in ways she had never predicted. She knew her gratitude had evolved into something deeper, something more meaningful than a temporary emotional response to a crisis. Though she didn't fully understand it yet, she knew her future and his were now linked in ways that neither of them had expected, and that the moment in the hallway had changed far more than just her heartbeat. In the days following the incident that had already begun circulating through business forums, staff group chats, and whispered conversations across the city, the story of the janitor who saved the billionaire refused to fade. Instead, it gathered momentum, transforming from a passing corporate curiosity into a topic of serious public interest. What had started as an accidental medical emergency had evolved into a narrative about class divides, workplace biases, and unexpected human connection inside one of the country's most powerful corporate empires. Employees at the skyscraper still spoke about the moment the billionaire collapsed in her private executive suite, a place few people ever entered. Even fewer could have predicted that the only person brave enough, quick enough, and skilled enough to act would be a janitor working the late shift. The city had already learned that he had used CPR when no one else stepped in, performing it with precision that suggested he had learned it somewhere meaningful, later confirmed to be from mandatory trainings during his years juggling multiple jobs to support his daughter. But what people seemed most interested in was not the act itself, but how the billionaire reacted afterward. Those close to the matter stated that she had not only thanked him privately, but had reportedly asked to meet him again, something that defied every unwritten rule of corporate hierarchy. Sources inside the company claimed she had been unusually quiet during board meetings that week, distracted in ways that her staff had never witnessed before. Her advisors noticed her pausing during presentations, her gaze drifting toward the window as though replaying the moment. She woke with his hands still steady on her shoulders. For a woman known for her absolute composure, her shift was impossible to ignore. And those who worked in the lower levels of the company reported rumors that she had visited the janitorial floor, something no one in her position had ever done since the building was constructed. Whether this was true or not, no employee could agree. But almost everyone agreed that something between them had undeniably changed. The janitor himself had tried to return to his routine, though he quickly discovered that quiet was no longer possible. Many coworkers treated him differently, some with admiration, others with resentment, a few with subtle envy. People who previously didn't know his name suddenly stopped him in the hallways to express gratitude or curiosity. Managers treated him with an awkward mix of respect and hesitation, unsure whether acknowledging him too openly would appear strategic. At home, his young daughter clung to him a little tighter. She had seen part of the story on the news and could only express pride in the pure, uncomplicated way children do. She had no understanding of corporate politics or economic disparities. She only knew her father saved someone's life, and to her that made him something close to heroic. Meanwhile, the board of directors had begun holding private meetings about the implications of the incident. According to several insiders, the board was split. Half believed the story enhanced the company's public image, proving their organization was built on teamwork and unity. The other half feared the appearance of impropriety, especially as rumors grew that the billionaire CEO had formed a personal interest in the man who had saved her. Shareholders were reportedly concerned that the narrative might distract from upcoming mergers. Public relations teams drafted multiple statements, none of which the CEO approved. Instead, she remained adamant that the story should not be spun or diluted. She believed that what happened deserved to be acknowledged honestly, not as a corporate highlight, but as a genuine moment of humanity. Journalists continued pressing for interviews. News outlets released opinion pieces questioning how such a vast divide between wealth and labor could close so dramatically in a single moment. Social media users debated fiercely about whether the billionaire owed the janitor more than gratitude, with some insisting he deserved a promotion and others arguing that corporate policy should be followed without exception. A few critics accused the entire situation of being exaggerated for publicity, but their claims were quickly shut down after medical reports confirming the CEO's condition were leaked. Behind all the noise, the billionaire made her decision quietly, without consulting public relations teams or the board. She scheduled a private meeting with the janitor, not in her office, where power dynamics were impossible to ignore, but in a ground-floor conference room rarely used for anything other than supply deliveries. According to a source who witnessed the moment only from afar, the atmosphere between them was not one of discomfort, but of mutual respect, as though both understood they were navigating something fragile and unusual. Those close to the janitor later shared small details about how he prepared that morning. They said he changed shirts 3 times, unsure which looked least worn out. He arrived early and spent several minutes standing in the hallway, steadying his breathing, not because he feared her, but because he feared misunderstanding her. He knew the world would twist whatever came next. All he wanted was to convey his sincerity, his lack of expectation, and his desire to remain honest in a moment already swollen with tension. When they spoke privately, the CEO reportedly apologized again, sincerely and without pretense. She expressed regret not just for collapsing, but for how employees had treated him in the aftermath. She acknowledged the pressure he must be facing, not only as a worker in a fragile position, but as a single father who did not ask for any of this attention. And she expressed gratitude for something more than the physical act of saving her life. For the first time in years, someone had looked at her without fear, without calculation, and without the usual layers of corporate caution. She told him she could not shake the memory of that. She told him that the honesty in his voice when he reassured her as she regained consciousness had stayed with her long after everyone else left the room. The janitor, reportedly overwhelmed, insisted he had done nothing extraordinary. He explained that he acted the way anyone should act in an emergency, especially after losing people in his life, because help arrived too late. He told her he did not want rewards, did not want special treatment, and did not want favoritism. But he did ask for one thing, that she understand he was not used to being seen by people in her world, and that her sincerity meant more than she realized. Several accounts say that she grew quiet then, visibly moved, realizing how differently they lived not by choice, but by circumstance. The meeting remained private, but its impact quickly became visible. The CEO left the room with a new sense of calm, and the janitor left with something he had not expected, an invitation to speak again, not as a rescuer and CEO, but as two human beings trapped by invisible walls they had never chosen to build. Public speculation intensified with every passing hour. Analysts discussed the possibility of a corporate restructuring that would empower lower-level employees. Human interest journalists explored the janitor's background, his daughter's life, his long hours, and the quiet resilience that had shaped him. Meanwhile, The billionaire found herself confronting questions she had never dared ask before about the loneliness of power, the isolation of wealth, and the possibility that the man who saved her life might also be someone capable of changing it by the end of the week. It was clear that what happened between them had already shifted from an accidental moment of crisis into the beginning of a story much larger than either of them had anticipated. And as the company braced for public statements, shareholder meetings, and unprecedented media interest, both the billionaire and the janitor found themselves standing at the edge of a future neither had imagined, yet both were strangely ready to face. Authorities and business analysts across the city remained stunned after a dramatic incident inside the headquarters of one of the country's most influential tech empires led to an unexpected act of bravery from the very last person anyone would have predicted. Early reports indicate that the billionaire CEO, whose company dominates sectors ranging from artificial intelligence infrastructure to global logistics software, suffered a sudden medical emergency that could have turned fatal if not for the decisive intervention of a man quietly sweeping the hallway outside her office. Witnesses say the black single-dad janitor, known among staff as someone who often worked late and rarely drew attention to himself, instinctively did what trained professionals sometimes hesitate to attempt. He leaned over, assessed the severity of her breathing difficulty, and performed a life-saving action that required both courage and absolute clarity. An act that culminated in an unexpected moment the building's employees are still struggling to process. He kissed the billionaire, though not in any romantic sense, but as part of an emergency protocol he remembered from a first aid course he had taken years ago for the sake of his young daughter. Several employees have since come forward, describing the moment as a collision between two worlds that were never meant to cross. The CEO, revered for her relentless pace, razor-sharp strategies, and unmatched influence on the tech landscape, had always appeared untouchable, insulated from ordinary life by layers of assistants, advisors, and security teams. Meanwhile, the janitor, who had spent years quietly working shifts others avoided, was known among staff for something entirely different: his kindness, his discipline, and the way he would finish his shift early if it meant getting home to help his daughter with homework. People who interacted with him describe him as the type of man who apologizes for bumping into empty chairs, someone constantly underestimated, overlooked, and underestimated again. Yet it was precisely that man who saw the CEO collapse, recognized the symptoms, and ran toward danger instead of calling out for someone more qualified. News outlets have rushed to gather statements from those who witnessed the event. Some employees say they froze, unsure whether what they were seeing was a fainting spell or something more serious. Others say they were afraid to touch the billionaire, mindful of security protocols and terrified of doing the wrong thing. But the janitor didn't hesitate. He dropped the cleaning supplies he had in his hand and slid toward her faster than anyone expected. A finance analyst who witnessed the moment remarked that the janitor moved like someone who had rehearsed the scene 1,000 times, as if saving a life were a muscle memory rather than an attempt to recall instructions. According to early medical evaluations, his quick thinking prevented her airway from closing completely, stabilized her breathing, and kept her conscious until medical staff arrived, an action that paramedics later confirmed had likely saved her life. But what has shocked the public even more than the incident itself is the ripple effect spreading through the company's halls. Employees describe a shift in atmosphere throughout the building, one that no one could have predicted. Staff members say the CEO, known for her stoic composure and emotionally guarded leadership style, regained consciousness in the middle of the janitor's intervention and locked eyes with him before slipping into a state of disoriented confusion. That brief moment, according to those present, had an intensity that no one expects to forget anytime soon. It wasn't romantic nor dramatic, but deeply human in a way that caught everyone off guard. She saw the man kneeling over her, performing emergency breaths with a steadiness that seemed impossible under such chaotic conditions, and something in her expression changed. Several witnesses recall her face softening, not out of weakness, but recognition, an acknowledgement that the person holding her life in his hands wasn't a doctor, a board member, or a bodyguard, but someone she had likely passed by 100 times without noticing. The janitor, for his part, didn't stay to bask in any attention. After paramedics arrived and took over, he stepped aside, visibly shaken, wiping sweat from his forehead and apologizing repeatedly, as though he had broken a rule rather than saved a life. Colleagues rushed toward him, praising him, thanking him, and attempting to comfort him. but he seemed far more concerned about whether he had done everything correctly than about the growing crowd of cameras and executives gathering around him. Those close to him say that humility has always been part of his nature, shaped by years of raising his daughter alone while juggling multiple jobs. They add that he never once asked for recognition. His first question, once he felt stable enough to speak, was whether the CEO would be okay and whether he had unintentionally caused her discomfort. Meanwhile, the billionaire herself, recovering at a private medical facility, has remained largely silent on the matter. Her communications team issued a brief statement thanking first responders and acknowledging an unnamed employee for swift and heroic action. But sources within the company confirm she requested the janitor's name personally. This request, unusual for someone known for maintaining firm professional boundaries, has fueled widespread speculation about how this incident may reshape internal dynamics within her organization. Analysts are already predicting that this moment may mark a significant shift in public perception, particularly because the story touches on themes of social class, racial disparity, and the overlooked value of frontline workers. Though official details remain scarce, insiders hint that the CEO has asked for additional information about the janitor's work history, personal background, and schedule, reportedly insisting on meeting him once she is fully recovered. Whether out of gratitude, curiosity, or something deeper, no one can yet say. But what is clear is that the moment he leaned over her to save her life has changed the narrative surrounding both of them in ways neither could have anticipated. And as reporters continue to gather outside the company headquarters, asking questions about what really happened inside that hallway, one thing has become certain. The simple act of one man doing what he believed was right has already started a story that is far from over. In the days that followed the dramatic rescue, the relationship between the billionaire and the single dad janitor transformed from an unexpected moment of survival into something far more profound, something neither of them had anticipated. The press continued circling around the edges of the story, trying to extract new information, and social media pulses kept speculating about every small detail surrounding the kiss that saved her life. Yet inside the walls of the company, far away from the public eye, the two people at the center of the whirlwind found themselves navigating a fragile new space marked by quiet gratitude, unspoken understanding, and the strange possibility that fate had rearranged their lives for a reason. The billionaire returned to work with a noticeably softer presence. Those who worked closest to her said she smiled more, sometimes without realizing it. Analysts reported seeing her pause in the middle of meetings, her expression turning thoughtful, as if replaying the event that had changed everything. Her security team, once rigid around her, seemed to step back more often, understanding that she was rebuilding confidence little by little. But her greatest shift of all was the one she showed toward the janitor who had saved her. The single dad himself tried to carry on normally, sweeping floors, inspecting light fixtures, repairing loose tiles, doing the steady, humble work that had always defined his days. But he couldn't ignore how everything felt different now. People who once brushed past him now looked at him with respect. Executives nodded at him instead of ignoring him. A few employees even thanked him directly, recognizing the bravery he had shown during a moment when others froze. Yet, even with that sudden attention, he kept his head down, reminding himself that his daughter depended on stability more than anything else. Still, whenever he crossed paths with the billionaire, something in the air shifted. She no longer passed him with brisk nods or distracted glances. Instead, she slowed down, as if drawn toward him. She asked about his day, about his daughter, about the kinds of challenges he faced balancing work and parenthood. Her tone carried no pity, only genuine curiosity and respect. He responded with equal sincerity, though always with a degree of hesitation, uncertain of how close he was allowed to stand to someone whose world operated at a level far above his own. But the billionaire made her intentions unmistakably clear one quiet afternoon when she visited the maintenance wing unannounced. Instead of speaking from a distance of hierarchy, she stepped close enough that he felt her sincerity. She thanked him, not for the first time, but in a deeper, more personal way. She told him she hadn't stopped thinking about the moment he acted without hesitation to save her life, how he didn't consider status, danger, or consequences. She admitted she couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at her as a human being first, a powerful figure second. That he listened, unsure what to say. Humility ran deep in him, and he didn't believe he had done anything extraordinary. He acted because someone needed him. The fact that she was a billionaire didn't matter at all in that instant. What mattered was that she was terrified, vulnerable, and in danger, and he had known he couldn't walk away. The conversation lingered long after they returned to their separate responsibilities. Something unspoken stirred between them, something that made both of them more aware of each other, more willing to allow the unusual bond to deepen. Their lives, shaped by different worlds and different hardships, had collided in a moment that none of them planned, but both continued to feel. And while neither of them dared to label what was growing between them, everyone around them could sense the quiet shift. Some whispered that destiny had intervened. Others said trauma had forged an unexpected bond. But those who truly watched closely believed something even simpler. Two people who had been carrying far too much alone had finally found someone who understood what it meant to survive. That it was the beginning of a story that was no longer about a kiss that saved a billionaire's life, but about the unexpected path that single moment had opened, one neither of them would ever forget.